Okay, Kristin Newton, there you are in Izu, and here I am in Kofu,
Yeah.
but it feels like we're practically in the same room. This is just a really cool way to connect. Yeah.
Beautiful view behind you.
Yes, yes. Well, we both have artistic views, being natural artists. But what I wanted to do today is share for the benefit of our ICLA students some of the benefits and the pleasures and the real importance of drawing in the liberal arts. And then we'll talk about how this can also be an analog antidote for all this zooming in, zooming out all the time. And then I'd like to connect the drawing to my classes. So if you would be so kind to address some of my questions, then that would be great.
Happy to do it.
Okay, super. So you are an awesome drawing artist, and maybe just briefly introduce yourself. I think many of our students know you already, but just briefly, who is Kristin Newton?
Okay, I started out as a glass artist, and I like drawing abstract, but I actually hated drawing realistically. And then I took a workshop with Betty Edwards, who wrote the book, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. That just knocked me out. And I thought, I have to teach that. And I've been teaching that for like maybe 30 years, something like that.
You've created your own variations on it too.
Oh, yeah.
I know the original, I know what you do, and there's some, it's really evolved.
It changed a lot, yeah. But anyway, it's the basic element is teaching people to see, because most people don't look. And drawing immediately helps you see. It's shocking. Like if I ask you to draw your face from memory, very few people can do it because they never look.
Yeah.
But if you draw it, you'll always remember it.
Yeah, well, I experienced your workshop many years ago, and we did the before after of the face portrait. It was the first thing we drew and the last thing we drew. And I showed this to a friend of mine who you know, Philip, and he looked at the before drawing and he looked at the after drawing, which was much better. And he said, Will, don't show this before drawing to any of the girls. I don't think it's going to help you. It was terrible. But anyway, it improved a lot thanks to your great instruction. So tell us more about the position then of drawing as a liberal art and in the liberal arts curriculum.
Well, let's see. Of course, people think of drawing as a class or a hobby or whatever, but if you stop and think about it, before the age of the camera, all scientists and alchemists were artists. They had to, because there was nothing, some of the top scientists and alchemists did amazing drawings. Even Louis Pasteur, the camera was already invented, but he could have been up there with Da Vinci. His artwork, his drawing were so incredible. And when you draw, you think in a completely different way, and you observe so carefully with time and patience.
Well, particularly in the early days of the camera, I'm sure that drawings would have been much more instructive and as an experience, and even now as an experience, it just takes you so deeply into it, as opposed to relying on the automatic and technical, features of the camera. I mean, it used to be you had to really set up the lighting, and now you just change it later, on your screen. So, so, okay, observation. So art and science were not separate. That's very interesting. And it's very liberal arts in the thinking.
Oh yeah, completely. Because just, the last century or so, they separated art and other things. And they also separated arts and crafts, because it all used to be one, even making crafts was beautiful. And, and if you stop and think about it, everything you see except for living creatures, plants and us, started with an idea and started with a drawing.
Probably a drawing,
how it evolves. How are you gonna, even the computer we're looking at now, it started with a drawing.
Absolutely.
Because how are you gonna express your ideas?
Well, even movies have storyboards. Storyboards as drawings. Yeah.
Every single scene is a storyboard. So, drawing is so important in life, and people just don't think about it or take it for granted.
Well, I think drawing too in this day when everybody's being asked or forced into social isolation provides
Yeah,
another really important antidote for for digital stress, and it becomes digital detox.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
great way to get, because we're doing this on Zoom, and but
sure.
all the classes are going to be on Zoom, and that's going to get old, I think. So to
Yeah,
have assignments that people can then go back into nature and reconnect with their senses. To me, that's just wonderful. Can you comment on that?
yeah, yeah. And actually, I've had 3 CEOs of major companies quit their job after they took my workshop. And
And quit the job to do what?
uh, and they 2 of them went to art school. One
Okay.
was the head of, I don't know if I should say British Airways for all of
Yeah.
Asia.
Mm.
And I don't know, I should probably not say the others, but I'm
Yeah.
still in touch with them. And
Well, household words, that I know, because I know some of the companies that you're talking about. Yeah, household words.
yeah. And so I've been emailing everybody, are you okay? What's happening with the, virus situation? And they
Mm.
said, oh, we're like under lockdown, but
Yeah.
we're drawing.
Yes. Before they probably wanted to, but just didn't. They were too busy
Yeah.
to get around to it or to really dedicate the time. Now they have no choice, but it's also a huge opportunity. So, but we will be doing, as I say, classes, right?
Uh,
And the students will be probably somewhat limited as to going to art supplies stores, although you can buy things online. But what are the
for sure.
basic materials that students would need to derive the benefits that you're talking about?
Pencil.
Pencil, okay, but what kind of pencil? Because there's different hardness,
um,
right?
yeah, 4B, 6B, and 2B are really good ones. And let's
Six,
see,
4, and 2B, okay.
yeah,
They're soft, yeah.
4, 6, whatever.
Or
Yeah.
6, yeah.
Uh, there's a eraser called a kneaded rubber eraser that is
Mm,
really good. Of course, a regular eraser, even a tissue is great for
mm,
like shading. And
mm, mm.
you can even use a tea strainer.
Yes, right. You kind of sand the pencil tip, I remember, and it creates a pencil powder that goes
Yeah,
on to, and then, yeah.
yeah, you can even use sandpaper and
Uh,
make pencil powder and then use either rub it with your finger or different things. You get beautiful shading that way.
yes, yes. Do you have a sample of a kneaded eraser handy, just so people can see what it
Actually,
looks like? It's kind of like white clay in a way. It's kind of,
yeah,
you
yeah,
can mold
yeah.
it, and yeah.
Actually, I left it in Tokyo.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Well, it's called a kneaded eraser. That's Kneaded,
Yeah,
kneaded
yeah.
eraser.
And
And it is
probably,
also needed as in the sense of Need.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
We need it. Yeah, okay. Very
Actually,
good.
in art schools in the old days, they used French bread. They crunched up,
Oh,
squished up the French bread and used that for erasers.
okay, and hopefully they didn't eat it after that.
Because I had one student who didn't know that. He was actually a top executive of Mitsubishi, and he took my drawing workshop, and he decided to try the entrance exam of Tama Art University.
Yeah,
So he went for the 2-day exam. He'd never experienced this. He didn't expect to go to art university. He just wanted to try it. So they
yeah.
handed out French bread in the morning, and he thought, oh, how kind. They're giving us breakfast. So he
They ate
ate
it.
it.
That's hilarious. Uh,
So
Great
innocent.
story.
He soon learned the purpose of it.
If you're gonna eat it, I think it's a good idea to take a bite before you put the pencil powder. But anyway,
Great.
so can you suggest some? Okay, you need a pencil, you need eraser or something to create pencil dust and to create shading. But you also need paper. What kind of paper would you recommend?
If you don't have a lot of materials, just A4 paper works. But if you want to get a nice drawing, the better the paper, the better the drawing.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. Well, like a
there's
sketchbook.
Yeah, there's sketchbooks and there's sketchbooks. There's
Uh,
some are called croquis. It's little thin paper that
yeah.
doesn't handle erasing at all.
Oh,
It's
okay.
like
Yeah.
it can get kind of thick. Even watercolor paper is nice and thick, and there's the front of the paper is stronger than the back. If
Okay. Yeah.
you feel it, you can feel different texture, and
Yeah.
the back isn't meant to be worked so much. But if you're going
Okay.
to
So
the front,
it's durable against lots of erasing, is what you're saying,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And it helps with the shading. Okay, so it's kind of a rough texture to the touch.
it doesn't have to be so rough, but
Yeah.
you know, don't be a cheapskate when you buy your sketchbook, because you
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
do a beautiful drawing and it's worth the money. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and they're not that expensive either, and I guess you can also get them online. But
True.
I don't know if there are any brands that you could recommend that students could think about as
Uh,
some of the
yeah, let's see. Maruman in Japan.
Maruman. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
seen those.
that's
Yeah,
a pretty
Maruman.
good one. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
There's
yeah,
something just, it's called Sketchbook. It's kind of an orange and green color. I don't know. It's probably on
yeah.
the,
And there's one. I think it's more green. Uh, but get a few and try them out.
and try them out.
The
Yeah.
best
Yeah.
way. I think it was Picasso said, when you don't know how to do something, learn
Try
by
it.
doing it.
Yes, yes,
Because when
yes.
you're fresh, you don't know what's going on. That's when you make all kinds of
Mm,
discoveries, because you don't have the
yeah,
stereotyped attitude about
yeah,
knowing something. And a lot
yeah.
of accidents are great inspiration.
Right. Yes. Well, of course, the best thing that students can do to learn this is to take. You have two classes that you offer at ICLA, right?
Yeah.
What are the names of them? Just give a short
Uh,
description of the two
One
classes.
is called, I think, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, which
Yeah.
teaches the basic,
Mm,
like, way to see. And then the other is, well, it's actually called Drawing 1 and Drawing 2.
mm,
But
mm, mm.
Drawing 2 is learning how to use art in your life. So
Oh,
everybody makes a project using art.
wow, wonderful.
Yeah, last time, wow, they got some great ideas. Even two of them came up with business ideas that they're going to
Oh.
implement. So, you know,
Excellent.
anything's possible.
Yeah. Well, okay, that's the best thing. And then, but what I'm hoping for on this call is for people who are not currently or have not yet, or maybe even who have had your class, but they're also taking other classes and they're doing all this stuff on Zoom. And is there a way to dive into those classes with the drawing dimension? Now, I for one plan to introduce drawing with your kind assistance into all of my courses, and maybe we could look at each of the courses and not so much in detail, but just give some suggestions, because you talk about basic techniques. I assume you're talking about contour drawing and seeing negative space and things like that. But
Yeah.
could we just look at each of the 5 classes that I teach and just briefly talk about what you would recommend
Sure.
as a means of using drawing?
Yeah, because last term everybody drew the armor of the
Yeah, that was, yeah. Well, I'll go through the classes one by one and then we'll talk about that. But the first one is calligraphy and kanji culture. Now, my thought is that when you're looking at painted calligraphy, and it might even be a period where we don't even have brushes, right? But there's certainly visual elements and masterpieces. When you're looking at painted calligraphy, there are negative spaces. It's very important to see that. And so I could see how that would help. Any thoughts on that? When you're using a pencil to study painted characters or semi paintings as well, what can you do?
But actually, do you have to use a pencil? Why not use a brush for that?
Well, you can, except that we may not be able to actually gather yet. I mean, you could use a Fude pen maybe, but I don't want people to buy materials until I can actually show them up close. So, but let's just start with pencil, maybe just for the beginning, or possibly Fude pen. And then the materials are the characters that are painted and the sumi paintings.
Okay, because actually in that case, muscle memory is real important. You could even take your finger and like just feel along how it's
trace the key line and the stroke order, yeah.
You do it with a pencil or with your finger. And I don't know if people know what negative space is. Maybe I'll just give a quick introduction. So say if you have your hand, most people look at their hand and say the word hand and quit looking because they know what it is. But the negative space is the empty space between the fingers. The empty space, the negative space, has no word. So there's no stereotyped image. So you
Ah.
have to look at what it really is. And
That
when
in the Chinese characters, that's obviously it's the space between and around the lines, and it's a very important part of the awareness when you paint,
yeah, completely. The balance of the line and the empty space.
or even
Whereas
the shape of the lines when four lines cross. You know, what does it shape inside? You know, that's a
yeah,
huge thing.
huge, plus the order of the strokes.
Yep,
Just,
yep.
but yeah, when they teach ABC or whatever in the West, they never ever think of the white space. It's not
Mm.
important. They're just looking at the lines. But in
So you end up with
Asia,
squash
yeah,
A's
yeah,
and
in
you know,
Asia,
sad
it's
E's.
the balance. It's like the white
Yeah,
shape is the structure of the line. They
yeah,
work together in harmony. So
brilliant, brilliant.
you've got to learn how to see negative space.
Yeah,
That's
and if you can
key.
see it, then you can paint it. You have a much better chance of painting it. And if you can't see it, you're not going to be able to paint it, no matter how much you try to copy the strokes. So I think that's a really good training. That's really helpful.
I
What
don't know
about
if it's useful
kanji?
for you, but I used to do life drawing with a model, and I tell her make a negative space pose, and she said, she's never had anybody
Uh,
after that, and
okay.
I only had the students draw the negative space, and
Uh.
with a pastel, so they got these empty
Ah,
spaces, and then the shape of the person appeared. So
emerge. Ah,
maybe you could even do that with the calligraphy or the
interesting.
kanji. Just
Yeah.
have even the pastel or smudgy finger to only draw the negative space. Forget
Okay. Yeah.
the
So instead of having black strokes on white background, you would have black background with white strokes appearing.
yeah. Or it could be
Yeah.
blue or pink or whatever you like, you know.
But the color, yeah, okay. But
Yeah,
then the white would be what's left, what hasn't
sure,
been
sure.
painted, which is
Only concentrate
yeah,
on drawing the white and
yeah.
forget the black, and then that'll switch how you see,
Oh,
and
wow.
that'll really change things.
That's brilliant. And you know, that actually creates something that's called a takuhon, which is a rubbing of say a stone cutting. And so
Uh-huh.
it comes out with black background and then white where the actual strokes, which are
Yeah,
in the stone, they're cut into the stone. It is empty negative space, really.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Okay. So I will definitely try that. And then another thought I had for calligraphy is mnemonics. And I had taught a course called Kanji Shortcuts. And then you take the elements, the radicals of the character, and they all have
yeah.
keywords in English, and you put them together into a story. Well, a lot of the, like the Heisig system and the mnemonic systems do that far, but nobody so far, except when I started doing it, was actually adding pictures to that, pictures
Ah,
and stories. And so I
yeah.
would have them draw pictures and just simple sketches and stuff. And it was really effective. They learned 3 to 4 times as many kanji in the same period as they were expected to in an ordinary Japanese
Oh,
class.
great.
So how would you use mnemonics to, drawing? You're not talking about realistic drawing in this case, more impressions to reinforce the key words. What would you do in that case?
Sure. So probably people get all panicked that they aren't any good at drawing and they
Yeah,
freeze up.
yeah,
So let's see. Yeah, just even stick figures, anything,
okay.
just kind of free up, and you can do it secretly. Even Turner used to have a lot of secret drawings that he didn't want to show people because he didn't want
Ah.
people criticism or opinions. So,
Yeah,
criticism and judgment frees people up. So if you just like think you were 3 years old again and just have fun
mm, mm,
scribbling,
mm, mm.
just try it out. Don't worry
Yeah.
about it.
Well, I think speed is important because you're talking about learning hundreds of characters, right? So you can't take like 15 minutes to draw a drawing associated with one
No,
character.
no.
It would be a waste of time.
Yeah.
So stick figures are good, and then maybe word associations with the story.
Yeah.
And I think secret drawings is good in the beginning, but it's also good if you can share what you've done and
Sure.
present it. Yeah.
Actually, I found there was different workshops I helped out with, and people had to do something kind of similar, draw with little stories or something. And with the pencil, they all froze up. So like the Fude pen is much freer, or you can even take Q-tips and put it in colored powder or something, the pastel color,
Okay.
and do
Yeah,
it
to add
with
some
the
color. Yeah.
Q-tips, because then you aren't stuck with the image of the
Yeah.
pencil and you aren't tight. It's
Yeah.
like you can even use your finger, do little, because little
Mm.
kids used to do finger painting or
Finger
something.
painting. Yeah.
Anything to loosen you up and
Yeah.
get
Okay.
basic shapes, and then you can always fix it up later if you want to make a beautiful little illustration. But
Okay. Super.
it's to
Yeah.
get away from freezing up.
Yeah. From freezing up.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then freeing up your imagination will free up your memory.
yeah,
Mnemosyne was the Greek goddess of memory. And
yeah,
her children were all the Nine Muses. They were all related to music and museum and
yeah, yeah.
muse as in imagination. And so the Nine Muses, poetry, and it was like her children were the liberal arts curriculum,
Oh,
basically.
that's fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Actually, I've done a lot of workshops in Korea, like for Samsung and stuff. And they bring me in because especially Korean people are so afraid of making mistakes.
hmm.
In Korea, making a mistake is death.
Well,
So
yeah,
I
sometimes
tell them,
literally.
but I tell them mistakes are the gift from the muse. It's
Uh,
like, that's where you get the ideas. We do all kinds of drawings and mistakes are inevitable, but they come up with brilliant things with these
mm, mm,
so-called mistakes. So
mm.
you might even have a class just making mistakes.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, so for one is to learn to see the structure and negative space and the stroke order is one, and
Uh-huh.
then the second would be for mnemonics to free your imagination and help you develop your memory. So that's great. So maybe we could move on to my samurai code and culture
Yeah,
class, and that's
yeah,
what you mentioned a moment ago. And there's so many things in samurai culture. We did the armor drawing, and everybody's drawing from a different angle. So every
yeah,
drawing would be a different perspective on the same item. That was really fun.
yeah.
You have castles. I mean, even in Kofu, there's castle. You can go and draw, not the whole thing necessarily, but even just the wall or the stonework or weapons. What else? Samurai crests. There's lots of visual things. Gardens. There's even samurai origami, which would be a fun thing to do also.
Oh, wow, that is, I
It's,
love to.
to make origami little, you can make a helmet or you can make a different
Yeah,
weapon,
yeah.
the
Oh,
carrier, for the
hey,
lord and everything.
fantastic.
So
So if you,
how would you, if you came in, of course we did the samurai armor, but if you were to come in and say, I want to introduce drawing to
yeah,
your samurai class,
yeah.
what kind of exercises would you come up with?
There's a few, like if you're drawing objects, you might use something like a viewfinder.
Oh,
You
yeah,
could
yeah,
just get this little picture frame at the art store, cut your own. And
yeah.
that helps you focus on one part
Oh,
instead of
okay.
getting overwhelmed. And then like say, I don't know, this isn't the samurai thing, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
helps you find the negative space more
Ah,
easily.
yes, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
so you can see the balance of the negative space and the object. And
So how would you hold, I mean, you're holding it with your hand freely in the air. And so every time you go back, it would be maybe different, or you have to hold it with one hand. Is there a way you
yeah,
could kind of place it on a tripod so it
yeah,
doesn't move?
sure, sure. Tripod. Actually, some people make a cap
A
and
hat?
they.
Well, I'm sure people can get very creative on that. Well, that's
Oh
really
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Isn't that what you have inside of a camera? You have the viewfinder and then the
Exactly.
grid. You
Sure,
can actually
sure.
have a grid of 9 squares and
Yeah, yeah. So it helps you focus instead of getting overwhelmed. And yeah, that's a good thing to do. And then drawing from life or drawing from a photo, it's totally
okay.
different.
Yeah,
So
that's true. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because we could go to 8-inch, hopefully, and then you have the garden and all these great angles and
yeah,
the light changes over the afternoon. So it's really a wonderful, full-on sensory experience. But you can't always do that, right? On the other hand, it's pretty easy to get access to excellent photos. So can you
yeah,
tell about the difference in the drawing experience with live versus photos?
sure. Well, of course, the drawing or the photo doesn't move and it doesn't
Yeah,
change. So
light
it's
spaces.
easier
Yeah.
to control. And, you know, for people without a lot of experience, it's easier to get a good result. But yeah, if you're going out in life, even moving your head a little bit is going to change the angle. Or
Exactly. Yeah.
minute to minute, the light is changing. And
Yes.
people are
Yes.
never aware of that until they start drawing.
Exactly.
Sometimes
Well, it's
the
almost like a
light,
movie, a moving
oh
picture.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Slow motion.
Yeah, once I had a bunch of students and we were drawing like some flowers, you know, like that. So
Uh-huh.
maybe for a couple of hours, and they all looked at the flowers, and the
Mm,
sun was shining in the
mm,
room, and
mm.
suddenly they all screamed because the flowers were moving with the
Oh,
light.
following the sun. Oh,
And how are you gonna, most people would never notice that
yeah, yeah,
unless you're sitting there drawing the flower for 2 hours.
yeah.
They were like dumbfounded. And we
Well, they're
thought,
probably,
okay, who's
yeah,
looking at who? The
yeah.
flowers are also looking at you while you're looking at them. It gives you a whole different
Yeah.
idea about life.
Well, it's like Chuang Tzu's Taoist story. He had a dream that he turned into a butterfly, and then when he awoke, he wondered if
Yeah,
he were a butterfly, dreaming he was a man.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Cool. So that heliotropic process, everybody studies it in school, but nobody observes it in daily life. And it's amazing to think. I mean, obviously, in a day they would move, but within 2 hours, you could actually see that,
Oh yeah, yeah,
like slow motion
completely.
time
I mean,
lapse.
though everything changed. Their drawing wasn't the same. Like they were like dumbfounded.
Wow. Well, that's brilliant. So if you and I've done some of this, you know, having students make
Yeah.
visual notes for everything. So for example, a visual glossary, even if it's
Uh-huh.
not like a super excellent drawing, or even if it's a photograph, you
Uh-huh.
label the parts and learn the words that way. So I think that's
Yeah.
a good way to learn
Yeah.
about the culture.
Because that's how little kids learn language and what things
Uh,
are. You know, from the age of 2 or 3, they're drawing all over, even on the wall. And, you know, it's sort of childish drawings, but by drawing it, they learn what the things are. And that
yeah.
helps them learn what they're called. And
Uh,
then around the age of 6, or when they go to school, they get all, you know, insecure and think their drawing isn't any good. And by
Somebody
the
laughs
time
at their
they're
drawings. It's
13,
yeah.
they often quit drawing. But it's like drawing is such an important process for culture, for learning about things.
Mm,
And totally aside from being good or bad, it
yeah.
doesn't matter. I mean, if you think of Van Gogh or Picasso or Rembrandt or Da Vinci, they're all completely different styles,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
they're all wonderful. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Your
Yeah.
style suits
Well,
you.
for example, my thinking is in this because you need to learn things, right? In a
Yeah,
class, in many classroom situations. If you're making visual glossaries, and as opposed to just studying or hearing the words with your ear or just
yeah,
reading them with your eye, I
yeah.
think you would be much more. You could pass a vocabulary test on samurai armor much more easily. Don't
Oh
you
yeah,
agree? Or
totally. Because it's like it activates the part of the brain in your drawing, and
Mhm.
yeah, you remember it so much better,
Oh, that's
completely.
brilliant. Okay, and then of course, if you go on field trips, you have just a literally infinite number of angles and subjects that you could draw.
Yeah,
So, oh, that's wonderful. So, and then we can do this with basic materials. That's really encouraging.
yeah, yeah.
Also, samurai signatures. Now, this is back to brushwork, but
Ah,
it could be
yeah,
with a pencil. They're highly designed, highly modern looking designs.
yeah,
Sometimes they incorporate elements of pictures with or symbols with the characters, and they're all associated with specific famous samurai, Sakamoto Ryoma, or you know, and you could so learn about their personality by copying their signature.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, those are fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's great. So those are some of the ideas that I've got on the samurai thing. Then Aikido. Okay, now we're into a special realm here because for one, Aikido is usually done with a partner. It's done in a dojo. It's very physical because you're falling and throwing and sensing space and timing of the attack and all this incredible stuff that's hard enough to learn in real time and space.
yeah,
And now the challenge is to teach it online. And
yeah.
one thing that I've recently found that I can do is I have access to a marvelous archive called from the Aikido Journal because I've purchased most of their programs, and I asked the owner if I can show this on Zoom by sharing my screen, and then of course we record it as well, so students could benefit from the videos of really professionally made, highly instructive videos that are designed for an English-speaking audience. So that's huge progress. However, I want to know how I can go beyond that with drawing. So what do you do when how do you teach gestures and movements and spatial concepts that are so dynamic using drawing?
That's perfect. There's something called gesture drawing.
Oh.
You've learned it, because I don't teach it generally in the workshops. It's a special class, but it's like it totally gets the eye-hand coordination active. And I wish I could show you in person, but the students and you can do, looking at the Aikido videos, have a piece of paper and give yourself like a minute and maybe freeze frame it, and then just get the shape. Don't worry about it being beautiful, get the movement. Like if you're going like this way, your hand is going, your pencil is going the same way as the movement.
Well, and those would be the key lines that you're supposed to be able to see. They're invisible, but you're supposed to be able to sense them so that you move on time.
Yeah. So say the person's going like that, and you're drawing, looking at it, going like that. And you get the general shape of the person, but it's completely in movement. So you can start out like with a minute, and down to 50 seconds, down to 40 seconds, down to 30, down to 20 seconds, down to 10 seconds. And,
or even a freeze frame,
Sure. So first, a minute feels too short for people. And how can they do anything in a minute? And then by the time you're down to 10 seconds, it's just like this elegant line, almost like a calligraphy line. And they think a minute is too long because it's 10 seconds.
That's interesting.
10 seconds catches that total essence of the movement.
Brilliant. Well, what I really like about that is that time does slow down as you improve in Aikido, which is two things happening. One is you're learning the technique, you're learning the movement and what part moves first, and so there's more efficiency, but also you're mentally calmer, so you overcome the four fears of the heart, which is surprise, fear, doubt, and hesitation. When those things fade away, you can see more clearly, you have more frames per second, and it's, I won't say it's like slow motion, but you have plenty of time to respond to what otherwise was right in your face and overwhelming you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, time really changes with drawing and things like that.
That's brilliant. Okay, so I will definitely do that, and then encourage students to keep a notebook, but to diagram and maybe even a diary about what they learned from that, because those are hard things to teach even in real time and space. But my theory is, and we have a chance to test it, is that if you've done several weeks, or even, we might even have to do a full semester or a good part of the semester on video, and then you go back to the live interaction, it could be that people would start way ahead of where they would have been had they done nothing.
Yeah. Because in different classes I had, I'd hire a jazz dancer. She'd be dancing, and then the students would draw her for like 10 seconds. And you could have everybody draw the videos, or even as they can mirror the movement of the videos, themselves, because it's all muscle memory.
Okay, so they could actually look at the clip and then try to repeat it with their body, which would give them a better sense how it feels, and then try to draw what they also experienced and felt. Get
it all in different aspects.
Wow, that is so cool. Or they could draw each other if they have, working with a friend.
Sure.
And then maybe use that as a means of checking, do you have the critical elements of the kata?
Yeah. Maybe when you get to that point in one of your classes, we can do a Zoom and everybody do that,
That would be so interesting,
Yeah.
Well, and then I also teach, although it's only in the fall, a Namba, which is the art of physical finesse. So I think everything that you just said for Aikido could also apply to Namba. And Namba we have basic exercises, balance exercises and flow exercises, but also Namba walking. And to get the sense of Namba walking, and to me, the most exciting thing about Namba and drawing is that you practice Namba walking in the out of doors. Now, nobody's saying social isolation and don't go out by yourself. You go outside, you can walk, and especially in Yamanashi, you got mountains, and there's so many things that you could do to experience Namba walking. Bring your sketch journal and keep a Namba notebook, and it might be flowers or insects you discover along the path, or cloud shapes. And so you got the whole world opens up to you in that case.
Yeah, because actually, I hope we can be kind of locked down for a while, because people are getting able to concentrate, you know. There's so many distractions in life. I just hope we all survive and don't get sick. But then society changes enough that we realize people need time like this in order to think.
Well, they were saying for recently that people's attention span is about like that of a goldfish, maybe 8 seconds at best. And the social media and all the fast pace of modern life that everybody keeps driving, our attention spans down to almost nothing. And when you have to be there, but you also have a technique. You're not like locked in chains, but you have a technique like drawing to help focus your mind and your imagination. You can go into various subjects. To me, that could be such a rediscovery of the Renaissance arts. You know, the liberal arts are all based on that. Yeah,
completely. Because teaching the workshop for so many years, especially I used to go to Hong Kong and teach a lot of kids workshops. And I think it was 1997 I started there. And little kids, you'd give them a drawing, they'd be like completely concentrated for 2 hours. I mean, they didn't even hear me talk. They were so concentrated. And then over the years, it's like the last few times I went, I mean, 10 minutes and they're like jumping around, they're bored, they do something else.
Just
like,
crazy.
What's happening? It's like ruining.
So the same age kids, I mean, some years later, were just not able to concentrate for even a short period of time. Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all. Adults can't concentrate. Kids can't concentrate. It's like, what is it doing to us?
Okay, well, that's so interesting, because then, and maybe, who knows, that maybe online learning will also open up the idea of remote learning. Oh, you're not just in your room because you can't go to the classroom, but you might be in another country and you still want to learn this thing, and you might not even be getting a degree, but if all these courses are available, a means of enlivening your mind and body, wasn't that wonderful? Super. Okay. So one last course, and this is maybe a real challenge, because career design. Okay. So you don't have a specific physical thing. Obviously, if you go out on an internship or you go and explore a company or an industry, they're going to have products, they're going to have visual things on their website. So I guess there are things you could draw, but you're also exploring yourself. Like, you're exploring, it's like, what are your passions? What's your purpose in life? What are you good at? What are your talents? And what can you get paid for? That would be your ikigai. We spend a lot of time on that. So how do you draw that?
Wow.
It's more abstract, but it could come in the form, say, you might have a passion that is connected to a hobby, and then you'd have a physical thing. But how do you draw when you're self-knowledge, internal, abstract emotions? Can you draw emotions?
Oh, yeah. Actually, Kandinsky was really good at that. And you might go more into color for that, because color is total emotion, like what's red. Yeah, there's something called analog drawing, and that's totally emotion and color and shape. I have to show you some examples I don't have right now, but that hits it exactly. And I told you before, I think at the beginning, I didn't like realistic drawing, and abstract is totally that. It's like, well, I need to.
Here's another thought, Kristin, just speaking about this. Let's say you're a student and you're going for an internship with a manufacturer, right? They make things, right? They will do mechanical drawings and stuff, but you haven't had a mechanical drawing course. But if you were doing, going back to your theme at the beginning, art and science are the same. You're doing scientific subjects or industrial subjects, drawing robots. in
Sure.
great detail. And then what a portfolio that would be to take to an interview.
Would be
Oh yeah,
good.
you know, I was interested in this subject. I didn't just read about it. I actually spent hours drawing these
Yeah,
things.
yeah. Because actually, I've had so many different students and learned so many different things from them. One student, she was applying for a job, that, she saw online or wherever she saw it, and there was 5 people interviewing her. It was a really tough interview, and then they said, "How can you prove you're creative?" It's like, oh, like how can
Oh,
you prove creative? So she
yeah.
had just taken my workshop. So she started telling all about the workshop and what she learned. And pretty soon the 5 interviewers were like that, just listening to her, asking her questions.
Wow.
They forgot about the interview and they said, wow, this job is no good for you. We have a much better job. And they gave her an incredible job, the job of her dreams.
Wow.
That
That's
wasn't even, nobody knew about it except if you were in the company. So,
so inspiring. Yeah.
yeah.
Because you actually create your job, or you tune into a whole different energy level when you get, and that was done with drawing. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
so we're running towards the end on time, but what I'd love to do, if you are up to it, is maybe once I've started doing this with my various classes that I talked about,
Yeah, yeah.
and we have some actual examples of students doing the drawings and experiencing the challenging, and maybe coming up with their own list of questions, maybe we could do another Zoom session with students during the class, and they could actually gain some more of your wisdom,
Oh,
and
yeah,
great
yeah,
ideas would come out of that. Would you be
yeah.
interested in that?
That would be fantastic. And I don't know, you talked
Okay.
about people around the world. And one of my friends, he's a sculptor in Russia, and we often collaborate. And
Yeah.
I've had him in my workshops with Skype, and we do amazing things. You might enjoy
Yeah.
that.
Well, the time difference, unless we pre-record it, but to get the students all together, it would have to be during the class hours. But I think it's a great
Yeah.
idea, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what will come of this. And I don't think we would have done it if it hadn't been for this crisis.
No,
We've been
so
talking about it for years, but we just didn't get
sure,
around to it.
sure, I know. So sometimes crises are fantastic.
Well, crisis means dangerous opportunity.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
or
yeah.
fork in the road, right? So which
It.
direction do you take?
Just
Yeah.
think, nothing else has got the whole world activated and united in
Mhm.
like a few weeks. It's like,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable. So
Yeah.
let's use this good energy and hope we all live and don't die and
Well,
change
I
the
think it would probably
world for
build your immunity too, because curiosity and excitement and movement are all things that will strengthen your immunity and put you in a positive state of mind, which also
oh yeah,
strengthens your immunity. So yeah, this could be the best
yeah, yeah,
thing. Yeah. Okay,
definitely.
so thank you
Oh
so much,
well,
Kristin. I really
thank you.
appreciate your time and brilliant ideas. And I will share this video with all of my classes for one, and then we can do a series maybe, that would be great.
Great. Well, it's always a delight to chat with you.
Oh, same here, Chris. Yeah, and it's fun to have you there in Izu, and I'm here in Kofu, and then we're going to meet again in the classroom.
Yeah, 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 great.
Okay, super. Thank you so much.
Sure,
So
thank you.
yes.
Bye.
Okay, bye.